61 seconds. That is all it took. 61 seconds for Marjorie Taylor Greene to sit in complete silence after Jasmine Crockett opened a blue folder, set 3 documents on the table, and said the words that stopped that hearing room cold. "You insulted me in this building, in front of cameras, in front of the entire country. You said you would never apologize. Fine. Then sit here and explain this file. Not a speech, not a partisan attack, just 3 documents and 1 direct question from a civil rights attorney from Texas who had been waiting 14 months for a different kind of answer. Watch what happens when Crockett reads the voting record out loud. Watch Greene's face change. Watch her attorneys look at each other the way attorneys look at each other when they realize the exit they planned for is no longer there. And watch 61 seconds of silence from the woman who told America she would never back down from anything. You need to see this until the very end, because what Crockett uncovered is not about personal attacks, and it is not about appearances. It is about what Greene was doing with her voting record and her fundraising while she was busy making headlines for all the wrong reasons. And it is about a pattern in her financial disclosures that raises a question nobody in that room was prepared for her to ask out loud. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This hearing just became the most important testimony of the year, and you need to see every second of what happened next. Let me set the scene for you. House Oversight Committee, Room 2157. Thursday morning, 11:04 a.m. Eastern Time. The room was already charged before either woman walked in. Everyone in that building knew the history. You cannot put Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the same hearing room without every journalist, every camera operator, every aide and attorney in the building understanding exactly what that room is carrying with it. May 16th, 2024. The fake eyelashes comment, the bleach blonde response, the chaos that followed, the refusal to apologize. 14 months of that hanging in the air like something unfinished. Greene arrived first. 4 attorneys, 2 aides. That stride. The one she has perfected over 5 years of being the most combative, most loud, most unapologetic presence in any room she enters. Chin up, shoulders back. The look that says, "I have never lost one of these, and I do not intend to start today." She sat down at the witness table and she checked her phone. She looked almost relaxed. She had no reason to believe today would be different from any other day she had spent in this building, turning confrontation into fuel. Then Jasmine Crockett walked in. No entourage, no aides flanking her. Just Crockett, a legal pad, and a thin blue folder that looked almost empty. 3 pages inside, maybe 4. A security officer glanced at it when she set it on her table. Nothing alarming, just paper. Crockett sat down. She did not look at Greene. She looked at her legal pad. She wrote something. She underlined it. Then she looked up, and she waited for the session to open. For those who do not know Crockett, she is not a politician who performs anger for the cameras. She is a former civil rights attorney from Dallas, Texas. She spent years in courtrooms before she ever set foot in a congressional hearing room. She knows how to build a case slowly, how to let documents do the work that speeches cannot, and how to ask the one question that makes everything that came before it suddenly make sense. She had been in this building when Greene attacked her appearance. She had responded in the moment the way she responded. But that was the moment. This was the preparation. And there is a difference between the two that everyone in that room was about to understand. The first 25 minutes were standard procedure. Other committee members went through their questions. Greene handled them the way she always handles questions she does not respect. Short answers, quick deflections, a slight smile that says, "You are not going to get anything from me that I do not want to give you." She checked her phone once. She spoke to one of her attorneys quietly during a brief lull. She looked, more than once, like she was already thinking about the statement she was going to release after this session ended. Then Jasmine Crockett took the microphone. Congresswoman Greene. The room shifted in a way it had not shifted yet that morning. Not the charged political electricity of two parties fighting. Something quieter, more specific. The particular tension of two people in a room who have unfinished business, and everyone else in the room knows exactly what that business is. Greene looked up from her phone. Crockett did not rush. She set her legal pad down. She opened the blue folder with the same steady deliberateness of someone who has done this before in rooms that mattered. She took out the first document and placed it on the table in front of her. She did not hold it up yet. She just let it sit there. I want to start by going back 14 months. A very small thing happened in Greene's posture, barely visible. Her chin dropped a fraction of an inch. Her hands, which had been loose on the table, moved together slightly. Not a defensive gesture, just a shift. The kind that happens when a body registers something before the mind has fully processed it. On May 16th, 2024, Crockett continued, her voice even and unhurried. You and I were in a hearing room together. You told me my fake eyelashes were messing up my reading. When members of this committee asked you to apologize, you refused. When the chairman asked you to withdraw your remarks, you agreed only to strike them from the record. You said, and I am quoting your exact words from that day, "I will not apologize for my words, and I will not change them." She looked at Greene directly. I am not here today to relitigate that moment. I am not here to get an apology you already said you would never give. I am here because in the 14 months since that hearing, while you were busy making sure everyone knew you would never back down, something else was happening. Something that has nothing to do with my eyelashes and everything to do with what you were voting for, what you were raising money on, and what your financial disclosures show about who was paying attention. She picked up the first document. This is your voting record on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. She held it up for the cameras. She read from it. 3 votes to release the sealed Epstein documents, March 2025, April 2025, and May 2025. All 3 in favor of release. She set it down. Now I want to be clear. She looked at Greene. I agree with those votes. The American public deserves to know what is in those files. I have said that publicly, and I mean it. But here is what is interesting. She picked up the second document. This is your campaign fundraising data from the Federal Election Commission covering the same period, March through May 2025. She held it up. In those 3 months, your small-dollar fundraising increased by 340% compared to the same period the year before. She set it down. 340%. She paused. Every time you voted to release the Epstein files, within 48 hours your campaign received a surge of small-dollar donations. She looked at Greene. I want to ask you about that timing, but first I want to show you the third document. If you have made it this far and this matters to you, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. What is in that third document is the piece that turned this hearing into something nobody in that room was expecting. Stay with this until the end. She picked up the third document, and this time she held it facing the cameras for a long moment before she began reading from it. This is a House Financial Disclosure Amendment filed by your office on June 3, 2025, she read. Amendment to previously filed disclosure. Addition of previously unreported transaction. Purchase of shares in a media company called Capital Reach Digital Inc. Date of purchase, March 4th, 2025, 3 days after your first Epstein Files vote. Amount between $15,000 and $50,000. She set it down. Capital Reach Digital Inc. She looked at Greene. That is a company that produces political commentary content, short-form videos, the kind of content that gets shared on social media, the kind of content that benefits enormously from exactly the kind of political controversy that your Epstein file votes were generating. She paused. Your vote drove controversy. The controversy drove content. The content drove traffic. And 3 days before your first vote, you bought stock in a company positioned to profit from that exact cycle. The room went completely still, not the restless silence of people waiting for the next thing, the heavy, loaded silence of people who have just heard 3 documents placed in sequence and understood what that sequence means. Journalists were not typing. Committee members had stopped the background movement of papers and phones that fills hearing rooms during routine questioning. Every camera in the room had locked. Even Greene's lead attorney, the silver-haired man who had been writing notes steadily for the past 40 minutes, had stopped writing. Greene's jaw moved slightly. A small controlled motion, then stopped. Crockett was not done. She looked at the cameras for just a moment. Not at Greene, at the cameras, then back at Greene. Congresswoman, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. She picked up all 3 documents together, held them as a set. Voting record, fundraising surge, stock purchase. 3 days before the first vote. She set them back down. On May 16th, 2024, you told me my fake eyelashes were messing up my reading. You implied I did not understand what I was looking at. You said I did not know what the hearing was for. She looked directly at Greene. I understood exactly what I was looking at then, and I understand exactly what I am looking at now. She tapped the 3 documents on the table. Did you purchase stock in Capital Reach Digital Inc. with knowledge that your Epstein file votes would generate the exact kind of political content that company profits from? Silence. Greene's lead attorney was on his feet before the question had fully finished landing in the room. Mr. Chairman, I need to object to the characterization that any investment decision made by Congresswoman Greene's financial advisor was in any way connected to her legislative activity. All investments are managed independently under a signed fiduciary agreement, and all transactions have been publicly disclosed. Crockett held up one hand, the same quiet traffic stop gesture. She looked at the attorney. I am not asking about the fiduciary agreement. I asked a yes or no question. She looked back at Greene. Did you have knowledge of that company's business model before the purchase was made? Congresswoman Greene, the chairman said, leaning into his microphone, you may answer the question. Greene looked at her attorney. He gave a very small shake of his head Not a full no. Just a check, a reminder of where the line was. Greene looked back at Crockett. Her voice was measured, flat. The voice of someone who has spent years learning to control what their voice reveals under pressure. Congresswoman Crockett, I resent the implication that my legislative decisions are in any way connected to my personal financial activity. My financial advisor manages my investments independently. I have disclosed every transaction required by law, and I will not sit here and allow my voting record in favor of Epstein file transparency, a position I hold sincerely and have held publicly, to be weaponized as some kind of improper activity. Crockett nodded slowly. She wrote something on her legal pad. Then she looked up. You said you will not allow your voting record to be weaponized. She picked up the fundraising document. 340% increase in 48 hours after each vote. She set it down. She picked up the disclosure amendment. Stock purchase 3 days before the first vote. She set it down. She looked at Greene. I am not weaponizing your voting record, Congresswoman. Your voting record is public. Your fundraising data is public. Your financial disclosure is public. She paused. I am just reading them in the same room at the same time. She leaned slightly forward. That is all I am doing, reading documents that you filed in a room where you are present, and asking you whether the timing is what it looks like. Now I need to stop for 1 second. If you believe members of Congress should not be able to financially benefit from the controversies they create, hype this video right now. The hype button is right next to like. You can hype 3 times a day for free. We have 7 days to get this into the top 100 most hyped videos on YouTube. Every single hype counts. Do it now. Then keep watching, because what Crockett says next is the sentence that stopped the room. Greene's second attorney, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a very still quality, leaned forward and whispered something urgently into Greene's ear. Greene listened. Her expression did not change. She pulled slightly away from the attorney. No, she was going to handle this herself. You want to know what the timing looks like? Greene's voice had shifted slightly. The flat measured control had something underneath it now. Something that was not quite anger, but was related to it. The timing looks like a congresswoman who voted her conscience and whose supporters responded to that vote by contributing to her campaign. The timing looks like exactly what it is: a member of Congress doing her job and the people who elected her choosing to support that work. And the investment you are referencing was made by my financial advisor based on publicly available information about a growing sector of the digital media market. There is nothing improper in any of this, and you know it. Crockett looked at her for a long moment. She did not respond immediately. She let the answer sit in the room. Then she reached back into the blue folder. There was one more page. She had not shown it yet. She pulled it out slowly. She set it flat on the table, and she looked at it for a moment before looking back up. Congresswoman Greene, 14 months ago you told me I did not know what the hearing was for. She picked up the last page. This is an email from Capital Reach Digital, Inc., to a political consulting firm dated February 19th, 2025. 12 days before your first Epstein Files vote. Obtained through a committee document request last week. She held it up. I am going to read one line from it, just one. She found the line, read it slowly. Quote, Content strategy for Q. One should be built around anticipated congressional activity on Epstein file legislation. Subject matter generates high engagement and repeat traffic. Positioning our platform for maximum benefit from this news cycle is the priority for March through May." End quote. She set it down. February 19th, 12 days before your first vote. Someone at this company knew that Epstein file legislation was coming. Someone positioned their platform to profit from it. And 14 days later, a financial account connected to your office purchased stock in that company. She looked at Greene. How did Capital Reach Digital Inc. know in February that Epstein file votes were coming in March? The silence that followed lasted 61 seconds. Multiple people in that room counted it. A journalist in the second row kept time on her phone. 61 seconds where Marjorie Taylor Greene, the woman who built an entire political identity on never backing down, never apologizing, never being the one who flinches first, said nothing. Her hands were flat on the table. Her attorneys were both writing at the same time, fast, their pens audible in the silence. The second attorney had stopped whispering. The room held its breath. "Drop a comment right now. Tell me what that silence tells you. Tell me what you think that email means." Because Crockett already knows. And in about 30 seconds, she is going to say it. When Greene finally spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been at any point in the morning. "Congresswoman, I have no knowledge of the internal communications of a private company. I do not know how they structure their content planning. I do not have any information about their editorial calendar or their investment strategy. And I categorically deny any connection between my legislative activity and any private company's financial positioning." Crockett looked at her. Then she looked at the committee. Then she looked at the cameras. "You categorically deny any connection." She said it simply, without drama, the way a prosecutor in a closing argument repeats the key phrase back. She picked up the email one more time. February 19th. "Someone at this company knew Epstein file votes were coming. March 4th, your account bought their stock." She set it down. 14 months ago you told me I did not know what I was looking at." She looked directly at Greene one final time. "I knew then. I know now. And so does everyone watching this." She gathered her 3 documents and the email, all 4 pages, back into the blue folder. She closed it. She set it neatly to her left. "These documents will be entered into the congressional record today. The voting record, the fundraising data, the financial disclosure amendment, and the February 19th email. Every date, every number, every line. The American people will see this with their own eyes." She looked at Greene one last time. 14 months ago you said you would never apologize. I never asked you to." She stood up slightly from the microphone, a small, deliberate motion. "I asked you to explain a file, and you had 61 seconds to do that." She stepped back. "I yield back, Mr. Chairman." The hearing technically continued for another 45 minutes. Other committee members asked other questions, procedural matters, budget items. None of it mattered. Nobody was listening. Nobody cared. Because Jasmine Crockett, a civil rights attorney from Dallas, Texas, had just walked back into a room with Marjorie Taylor Greene, carrying a blue folder with 4 pages in it. No armies, no allies, no grandstanding, just documents, dates, and one question that got 61 seconds of silence instead of an answer. Within minutes, the clips were everywhere. Crockett reading the February email out loud. Crockett saying, "I knew then, I know now." Greene sitting with her hands flat on the table and nothing to say. Legal analysts were debating whether the committee document request that produced the Capitol Reach email opened the door to a broader financial review. Financial ethics experts were discussing whether the pattern Crockett had laid out met the threshold for a formal Stock Act inquiry. And somewhere, whoever wrote that February 19th email at Capitol Reach Digital Inc. was probably having a very long conversation with their own attorneys. This is not personal. This is not about eyelashes. This is not about bleach blonde anything. This is a voting record, a fundraising report, a financial disclosure, and an internal company email. All of them public or entered into the public record, all of them pointing to the same 14-day window, all of them asking the same question. What did she know? And when did she know it? Share this video everywhere. The conversation cannot stop here. The February 19th email is now in the congressional record. The stock purchase is now in the congressional record. The 340% fundraising surge is now in the congressional record. The American people have a right to know what connects those four documents and why the woman at the center of all of them had nothing to say for 61 seconds. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. And if you missed Ted Lieu connecting Greene's Palantir stock purchase to a classified Homeland Security briefing in last week's hearing, watch that video on screen right now. Same pattern, different documents, same 61 seconds of silence. The truth does not move fast, but it does not stop either. One document at a time, one hearing at a time, one silence at a time. 61 seconds, 4 documents, 1 question, and Marjorie Taylor Greene with nowhere to go and nothing to say.